John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. They're a couple of absolutely self-involved bull artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Headshot, bang, oh, done.
All right, good to be with you Monday, April 17th, 2023, episode 404 of the Anik and Florian podcast. Ken-Flo is back on the East Coast. A lot of travel. Now, you don't do the PFL Europe, is that right?
I do not. I admit that was my week off, but it was like 8 weeks of Challenger Series, had like a week off, and then it was like 3 consecutive weeks of the regular season.
So you don't want to hear any complaining from these UFC commentators, nor does Sean O'Connell. So will you do PFL Europe in the future, or is that like a different analyst?
So basically, I think that it's a different analyst. You know, they're using a European analyst, I believe. Yes.
A little too expensive to get Ken-Flo overseas. I understand.
Yes.
I understand. We have a lot to get to today. Big PFL 3 event at Virgin Hotels in Vegas. Of course, UFC Fight Night in Kansas City. But I want to begin with the PFL, and the PFL debut for Hurricane Shane Burgos does not go according to plan. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, I mean, the Canadian gangster, just taken over since leaving the UFC. I know that was not the main event. It looks like Natan Schulte and Stevie Ray was the main event. And it looked like you guys went main card before the prelims. Is that what happened?
So this is why it's so confusing. It was the last fight. Here's the thing. The last fight, you are correct, was Natan Schulte and Stevie Ray. But the main event was Burgos and Olivier. We basically had extra time because there were a ton of first round finishes. So we kind of threw in Natan Schulte and Stevie Ray there as one extra bonus. Pretty good event, man.
Seems like a lot of finishes, a lot of first round finishes on the main card, but then it seems like maybe a lot of decisions on the prelims on that back end.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Which I guess was good, you know.
Yeah, right.
But the prelims started to get slow. We got off to a hot start. There were awesome finishes. Things started to slow down midway. Then it kind of heated up at the very end. But yeah, man, Olivier looks phenomenal. Undefeated in the PFL. He's putting it all together. He's fighting with a tremendous amount of confidence. I thought he outstruck Burgos in round 1, then kind of leaned on his wrestling and jiu-jitsu in rounds 2 and 3, just showing how well-rounded he is. But yeah, I thought it was a phenomenal performance, man.
Good news, bad news for the highly touted free agent acquisition, Shane Burgos. He does get to fight here on June 23rd, so he doesn't have a lot of time to sort of soak in the misery of this one. But what did go wrong for Burgos, who seemed very frustrated after the fact?
Yeah, he was complaining about, him and his team were saying, hey, we thought Olivier was here to fight. We wanted him to fight. It's like, it's mixed martial arts, man. He's going to mix it up. He's going to try to grapple you. You had your chances to strike with him in round 1. It seemed like he was a little bit cold heading in there. Really couldn't find his rhythm until late in the fight. And a lot of that had to do with Olivier, his ability to get in, get out. I thought he was pressuring. Actually, he was kind of staying in the pocket against Burgos and still outstriking him. So I don't know. It seemed like Burgos was thrown off by that a little bit. He was hesitant. And he didn't know what to do as far as the takedown game. It was Olivier who had that body lock from behind, and then he was taking his back and controlling him from there. So Burgos just couldn't get anything started. But I think it was more than anything else, just a quality fight from Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And Burgos, I think, should have been a little bit more aggressive early on, and I don't know, should have been able to maybe stop those takedowns better up against the cage.
And if you are Olivier Aubin-Mercier, the 2022 PFL lightweight champion, right? It's a tournament. He's fighting in a couple months too. So minimized risk, and he moves on, albeit without the all-important finish. What do you got for me on my guy, Clay Collard? I did not see the fight. I'm a big Clay Collard fan, and he gets it done 30-27 across the board over Yamato Nishikawa.
He can't fight in a boring fight if he tried. Every single time it's like, I'm going to fight smarter. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And he just gets in these wars. I've made this comparison before. He's like the missing Diaz brother, man. It's crazy the kind of fights that he gets into. He always finds a way to make it exciting. Nishikawa, though, I think really proved himself as a guy to watch out for. He's known more for his submission game. And he was definitely undersized against Clay Collard, who was landing a lot of strikes against him. But Nishikawa had a lot of success with leg kicks, and Clay was having trouble keeping his base out there. He was kicking the legs from underneath Clay Collard several times during the fight. And dude, 20 years old, has 30 professional fights. Just insane. His dad wanted to be a professional fighter. Didn't make it for whatever reason, decided he was going to have a son that was going to be a professional fighter. Nishikawa never attended kindergarten, first grade, never went to formal school. He trained him. He basically trained him full time as a fighter since day one. He was homeschooled. He was walking around Las Vegas barefoot all week because he says that's how he fights.
Wow.
So he walks barefoot. I mean, he's like an old school throwback martial artist, man. But he lost against Collard. But I thought that was one of those cases where, you lost, but you really proved yourself as a tough dude, like similar to Arnold Allen. Maybe he lost, but I think he got a lot of praise and a lot of respect in that loss.
Cleanest streets in America in Las Vegas, so you might as well walk around barefoot. Yeah. And I'd imagine this is making you rethink every decision you're making now as the father to a son in terms of his educative quest. And I think he should be a fighter as well. Archer, if you get ready, buckle up, son, because Ken-Flo is going to throw you right in there. So it's Natan Schultz, not Natan Schulte, is that right?
Natan Schultz, yeah, exactly.
Natan Schultz. So I'm walking around yesterday. So I let my daughter and her friend go shopping. So I'm trying not to be like all suffocating. So I'm outside, I'm walking around, trying to get it in a little bit, get some vitamin D, a little cardiovascular. And I see Conan Silveira about 8 hours after Edson Barboza had defeated Billy Quarantello here in South Florida. I said, Coach, big night for American Top Team. It's like big weekend. We went 9-0. So Schultz, part of a 9-0 weekend for American Top Team. What did you make of Schultz getting it done over Scotland, Stevie Ray?
So best performance that I've seen from Natan Schultz. He's already a two-time champion, so he already has banked $2 million for himself. But since I have seen him, he's always been super exciting, similar to Clay Collard. He just can't find himself in anything but an exciting fight. Loves to move forward. He's like a Terminator. Calf kicks, judo takedowns. Awesome to watch. But this was the cleanest, smartest performance that I've seen from him yet. He said he's been working hard on his grappling, his wrestling, and his jiu-jitsu game. And it showed. Looked amazing. Just always seemed like he was a step ahead of Stevie Ray, who's very good on the ground. But Natan Schultz showed that he was a little bit smarter, a little bit quicker to move, and just was out positioning Stevie throughout the fight.
All right, and before we move on to UFC Fight Night, I mean, what can you get Sada Boucy off the prelims, Kenny? Do you wield enough power to get Sada Boucy onto the main card?
I know, right? Sadabu had a great fight, man. Ended up fighting a very tough Jarrah Al-Salawi out of Jordan, and had a great performance. Was really able to utilize that long frame. His 6'3", at welterweight, huge for the weight class. Just very good with those long-range weapons. Ultimately, it was a knee to the body on the liver side that just folded Al-Salawi like fresh laundry, man. It was brutal. Ended up getting it done. So Sada Boucy, I think, he has a tendency of fighting conservatively. He's one of those guys, it's very difficult to win a round against him. But I think this year he's coming with way more aggression and way more will to finish the fight. And I think that was a great start for him. So great win.
What a fun name to say, Sada Boucy. Cody, is that Swedish Denzel? Is that what they call him?
Yeah. Look at this guy. He knows everything.
So Cody Merrow tells me that Sada Boucy, I mean, what a name you can punch there with a call. Sada Boucy was offered to us for the Anik Florian podcast today. We had Francis Marshall booked, and I should have teased that off the top. Coming up a little bit later in about 40 minutes after Ray Longo, UFC featherweight Francis Marshall, who fights this weekend live on ESPN Plus. So we do hope we get a chance to talk to Sadabusi, and we do hope to see him on a main card coming to you shortly in the PFL. All right. Max Holloway and Arnold Allen in our featherweight main event from last weekend. And it goes to Max Holloway, unanimous decision, 49-46 times 2. Dissenting judge had it 48-47. I felt like there was an argument to be made that Max Holloway did bank the first 4 rounds. My go-to scorecard, Sean Sheehan, suggested a round 2 for Arnold Allen. I certainly think there's an argument to be made there. Big round 5 for Arnold Allen on the heels of Firas Zahabi suggesting he needed World War III in round 5. I would submit to you, if Arnold Allen goes World War III in round 4 and 5, maybe we're talking about a different outcome. Instead, Max Holloway maintains his spot near the top of the division and adds a 20th UFC win. Your thoughts on the UFC main event?
It's an extremely difficult thing to have a strategy that involves having to outpoint or outfight Max Holloway at his own game. And I think that's kind of maybe where the failure was a little bit too much, is that, and Arnold Allen kind of has that style that Max Holloway does, but Max Holloway just played it better. And again, when you're talking about experience, and this is why I went the way of Max Holloway, it is so tough to make those right decisions against someone with the kind of experience that Max Holloway has. Dude, Max Holloway is an absolute treasure. The way that he fights, his toughness, there's so many different levels to how he approaches the game. He's like, oh, okay, you want to try to outpoint me? I'll outpoint you. You want to switch stances? I can switch stances. Oh, you want to get nasty and try to knock me out? I'm game for that too, and I'll beat you at that as well. So this was a Max Holloway that I thought who looked great. He looked energized before the fight. He fought like he was energized during the fight. And I think what makes it all the more impressive is that this was an Arnold Allen that fought extremely well, but Holloway was just a little bit better.
So it sounds great that Arnold Allen's stock may go up. I don't necessarily see it that way, and I love this kid. I haven't had a chance to call a lot of his fights, but you know how I feel about these 2-year championship setbacks, and I'm not a fighter, and I can't go into his head, but I felt like as great and as urgent as Firas was at the beginning of round 5, I just feel like, to your point, you can't dick around with Max Holloway. I know how hard he is to put away. He's just a really hard guy against whom to bank rounds.
Yeah.
As far as Arnold Allen moving forward, Kenny, valuable experience accrued, obviously. 25 minutes with Max Holloway, hard to do much better than that. But if you were to look at him with a critical eye as you spin it forward against the other top 5 at featherweight, what would you say to Arnold Allen in terms of taking his career to the next level?
I would have liked to seen more of an approach like Volkanovski took against Holloway, right? Where you're able to dance in, dance out, land big shots, make Holloway pursue, and then counter him again and get out of the way. I don't think there was enough where he was frustrating Holloway. There was no point where Holloway was really frustrated. He stood in front of Holloway a little bit too much and tried to outpoint him at his own game. And I think that's where he failed a little bit too much. I also would have liked to seen him mix it up in the clinch. Anytime Holloway was getting off, get to that clinch like he did in round 5 a little bit. Slow him down, take him out of his rhythm, then go back in, use your striking game. I didn't see enough weapon variety. I didn't see enough variety with his overall game. I thought that he really just tried to make it a boxing fight. And against Holloway, it's going to be extremely difficult to beat Max Holloway in a boxing fight inside the octagon. So I didn't expect him to try to take him down because Holloway has very underrated takedown defense. Maybe it's not underrated. Maybe it's just damn good. But either way, it would have been tough for him to do that. So, and to your point, I would have liked to seen more aggression early on in the fight. I guess I think he won round 2.
Yeah.
I think he was on his way to winning maybe round 5, and maybe there is an argument for round 5 as well. But him getting dropped at the very end didn't help him. But he certainly took a more aggressive approach in round 5. But I would have liked to seen him be more aggressive in rounds 3 and 4, and then put the pressure on Holloway late in the fight. It was tough. I thought he really should have stepped on the gas earlier in that one.
I got a question from one of our longtime faithful listeners, Bruce Marshall. He's the guy at the live events wearing the merchandise, if you're wondering. By the way, Cody, that hoodie that some fan was wearing in Kansas City with the brand new DraftKings podcast logo and yo fucking later on the back, which is a nod to my best friend Hurricane Montgomery. Did we make those? Or did that dude make it on his own? Either way, it's a brilliant
that's
hoodie.
a bootleg.
Oh, you gotta
Dude.
love it. All right, so here's there. Right, yeah. So here's the question from Bruce Marshall. And as you marinate on this question, I'm going to throw out some numbers for you on the back end. Max Holloway is the sharpest, smartest fighter in the UFC. How does he come out of a tiny gym and these monster gyms cannot produce the same? Strictly a fighter with natural skills. That's a question for Kenny Florian. And as you marinate on what makes Max great, every time he fights, and you see his performance against Calvin Kattar, obviously is immortalized behind me if you're watching on DraftKings YouTube channel right now. I still can't wrap my head around what he was able to do volume-wise against Calvin Kattar, that over those 25 minutes, he landed 300 more strikes than he did against Arnold Allen on Saturday night in what was a pretty good effort volume-wise. You know, the commentators kept saying every time Arnold Allen landed, Holloway was hitting him with a four-piece combination on the backside. Against Calvin Kattar, he landed 445 significant strikes on 744 attempts. Like, that will never be broken. Don't at me. That will never be broken. 274 significant strikes landed to the head against Calvin Kattar. Last night, efficiently, Holloway lands, or Saturday night, 147 significant strikes on 262 attempts. So far less volume, methodical, measured, at his calculated best. He can beat you in a number of different ways. He can beat you with 700 plus strikes. He can beat you like this. What makes him so special, and how has he been able to do it seemingly with, I shouldn't say no names around him, because there are a lot of talented coaches around him, but he has kept this circle tight and has realized success while doing so.
I think there's a lot of things at play here. We could talk about preparation, number one. Clearly, his coaches are preparing him extremely well. He's also putting in an extreme amount of work. One doesn't just throw that many punches against Calvin Kattar without being in insane shape. And that, obviously, it's twofold. I think there's a lot of natural ability there. The way that he's built, he's almost built like a marathoner or a triathlete. But also, you have to be putting in the work in training camp. You can't just go out there and do that and go, I'm going to rely on my natural cardio or my natural lungs to do that. You got to be training your ass off. And clearly, Max Holloway and his team are doing that. I think on a technical level, they're always pushing the envelope as well and looking for ways to get better. But perhaps the most important thing out of all of that, John, I think is the culture in Hawaii. If you have a beef to settle, you settle it, and you settle it with your hands. You go outside and you say, what's up? Those guys have been doing that for a very long time, and they've been doing that since they're little kids. And,
right.
and also, you had this guy in BJ Penn who was like this virtual god out of Hawaii. So all these little kids have been looking up to BJ Penn and all these other Hawaiian fighters for a long time. So I think the MMA culture has been there and been there strong for a very long time. And I think those guys have just been training and had that culture around them for a very long time as well. You know, you talk about Helson Gracie moving there to Hawaii way back in the day, like early 90s. So they've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. They've been fighting for a long time, surf culture and how they, fight and protect their waves and their territory. So they have all those things that kind of makes them a very strong warrior culture. Yeah. And, then you add in all those gyms that are there. And I think you get kind of this perfect recipe to create someone like a Max Holloway.
Unheralded coaches, Rylan Lazarus and everybody else, strength and conditioning coaches on point, but Darren Yap, I believe is his name. But you're right to acknowledge the warrior spirit. And speaking of warrior spirit, speaking of a guy with a skin tone who makes it look as though he resides in Hawaii, the great Ray Longo now joins us for his weekly Ray Longo Minute.
Look at you. On my bucket list, Hawaii.
You've never been to Hawaii?
No, I've never been to Hawaii.
Wow.
I'm waiting for the UFC to go.
We're not going. Maybe the PFL go to Hawaii.
Yeah, but why is Why can those promotions do a show over there and we can't with UFC?
Right? I like how you say we.
Yeah,
when it refers to the
this
UFC.
Is our promotion, no?
Yeah.
I think it's it's very expensive, right, to put an event on. I think that's part of it, I believe, which is why like big organizations hesitate and go in there. I think that's a part of it. But yeah, I got beautiful there, man.
We got James Gonzalez going over there, leaving tomorrow to fight Aaron Pico.
Oh wow!
In the next card, yeah, big fight for James. Yep, going to be a great fight.
The Barn Cat.
The alley cat.
Oh, the alley cat.
The barn cat was, what's his name?
Tristan McCrory.
No,
the
alley cat. McCrory.
The alley cat's even better. Yes, sorry.
I'm just testing you guys' trivia back in the day.
No, I think there are a lot of hurdles in Hawaii, maybe venue. I know Dana doesn't want to do a show outside, but man, does that feel overdue. But why aren't you going this weekend, if I may ask, if it's on your bucket list?
Well, I mean, we have a couple of big fights coming up at the Prudential Center. I think I got to sit back. No,
I understand.
We got the steamroller and Aljo's back, so this is big stuff, man.
I just wanted to say, if you need the Anik and Florian podcast, fly to Hawaii to corner fight. We're happy to support. You know who isn't flying you to Hawaii? Fucking Extra Rounds.
100%.
I mean, that is just the lock of the century. Extra Rounds not flying you anywhere.
They offered to fly me to Newark.
Had you said that's okay, the Anik and Florian podcast would give me a black car service from Garden City right to the Peru.
100%.
Speaking of UFC 288, Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira off. Wow. I mean, what has Benny Dariush got to do? At this point, I think you got to give him a title fight.
I think at this point he's a jinx, that poor guy.
Oof.
Man, but that was a fight I think people were looking forward to. It was a great compliment to the main event. I hope they fill it up with something. They get a big fight in there, because I think people were looking forward to that fight, especially, Benny being such a nice guy. And, I don't know. Really, when I heard that news, I was like, this you got to be kidding me.
John, was the injury disclosed for Oliveira by chance?
No, not that I saw.
Okay.
But I do think – go ahead, Flo.
I was going to say, you finish it, because I was going to mention what Cody was saying in the chat, which I think is very interesting.
Well, I'll let you circle back to that. I was just going to say it does stand to reason, as you rep Team Steam, that Matt Frivola and Drew Dober are going to get an appreciable bump on this fight card and probably get a prominent placement on pay-per-view. So that's exciting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's good.
Ken-Flo, what do you have?
So Cody is saying that both Gilbert and Bilal tweeted May 6th with eye emojis, and that would be a great fight. Bilal and Burns going at it. Obviously, Bilal and Gilbert both saying that they want that next shot. I think that's a perfect fight. I think it's a great fight. If that's what they're working on, that would be very interesting. And apparently Beneil is saying that they're moving the fight with Oliveira back to June 9th.
Wow.
What do you guys think of that?
That is a lot to digest. I had not seen those tweets from Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad. That is just a few short weeks away. It would be a huge injection to this fight card. And the fight game works in mysterious ways, right? Arnold Allen even, I know he's banged up right now, but he could realize a high-profile short-notice opportunity that could change everything I say about these two-year championship setbacks. Yeah. I do know that Gilbert Burns at times has expressed frustration that Bilal had passed him in the rankings, like when he lost to Khamzat Chimaev, and took some issue with that. And it seemed like Gilbert Burns, Ray, after he beat Jorge Masvidal, suggested, give me a championship opportunity or release me, but maybe a short notice fight against Bilal maybe gets a little bit extra money. Who knows? But that would be a nice little lead into your guy, Aljo, Raymond.
I'm saying that's going to happen. I don't know why, but you guys just put it on the table. I'm thinking that's happening, that fight.
And Dana said he was working on a new co-main event. So maybe that's the one.
And he kind of alluded to Gilbert Burns. So we got 50% of what he was thinking. And Bilal's game for anything. So I would think that's why I'm heading in that direction. If he mentioned Gilbert Burns' name, and I think he's 100% jumping in there, I think that fight's happening.
Gilbert Burns did fight 15 minutes on April 8th, 9 days ago, Kenny. Perhaps that's a good thing, perhaps not. Bilal Muhammad is training right now during Ramadan several times a day, as is his norm. But that is a really high-profile fight to have no buildup. It is interesting when it comes to Leon Edwards. I still do believe Colby Covington's probably going to be next, but Leon Edwards is the champion. He has his own desires. He has said repeatedly he doesn't see a number one contender. If these two dudes fight, the winner of that fight's the number one contender, Ray.
Yeah, but, John, you said something too. This work, MMA works in mysterious ways. Colby Covington gets hurt. One of those guys is right there where he wants to be, and that happens, more than you think it happens, right? So nothing's in cement, and that's why you got to be ready all the time. And like Kenny was saying before I got on here, you got to be training your ass off every day, because those opportunities don't come, every month. They come once in a while, so you better be ready to seize the opportunity. So for all those guys that are in that spot and they want it, they have to stay ready in a high way too.
It's interesting, Kenny, because Colby Covington doesn't want a non-title fight right now, and he keeps himself in phenomenal shape. But you do wonder if Colby Covington was offered May 6th, if that would appeal to him, or if he just believes that he can hold out and still get that title shot. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of that as a potential option as well. Maybe he hops in there against Burns or him against Bilal. I mean, there's a bunch of options. That's a good thing for the UFC, and there's no shortage of talent. And you got a bunch of guys. You got three guys that all think that they deserve the next title shot. Well, let's have at least two of them fight it out. Let's see what's what.
I love it.
It's all speculation, and we are going to move on. But if you're Tim Simpson, Leon Edwards' manager, and Leon is hell-bent on fighting a true number one contender in his own mind in Abu Dhabi in October. And by the way, Leon Edwards has suggested that is his timeline. Maybe Leon's management goes to the UFC and says, we'll sign a contract to fight the Bilal Gilbert winner in October, 1,000,000%. But right now, we're not going to sign a contract to fight Colby Covington. I don't know. We shall see. But we'll see which number one contender emerges out of all of that. Ray, did you watch PFL 3 to support Ken-Flo or not? I mean, don't lie to the audience.
Yes, I hold on a second. Yeah, I'm going to say I saw PFL 3. I didn't like the way that was the main card. They screwed up something on TV, so I missed a couple of the fights. Right or wrong? Is it me or
no? You're right.
It was all over the place.
I was looking for the Shane Burgos fight, and I missed that. And then I did see the Stevie Ray fight, and I saw a couple of fights. Yeah,
we had to take a back seat to the NBA playoffs. They screwed
something
it all
like
up.
that, right? Because I was racing home, and then I was like, I don't have to race home. It starts at 9:30. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I love how he says it though. I'm going to say I watched PFL 3. I'm going to say I watched it. Is that what you're going to say?
Well, you know what?
Say you watched
I did watch it. 100%
I know.
watched it. Yeah.
You know who was there? Aljamain Sterling. The bantamweight champ from the UFC. He was there. Dude, he consumes everything. Like, I see him tweeting from the early prelims on the UFC. He's going to the PFL fights. Like, he's watching everything from the beginning. No. He watches everything, man. He's a student of the game.
He is a student of the game, and he not only does he watch it, he retains it, unlike me, who might have watched it, and I don't even know, because after the UFC on Saturday night, that already erased Friday night for me, so... but I definitely saw it.
He's looking lean and mean, man. He's looking like he's in great shape.
Yeah. Excited to see him today. Yeah.
Oh, he looks like an absolute monster. I mean.
Yeah, he always.
So, all right. So I get myself in trouble for myriad reasons all the time. Seems like not a day goes by where I have like a clean day where my wife or my twin brother isn't like, dude, can you just shut your mouth and call the fights, please?
Yeah, the good news is we're getting used to it, so it's like normal now.
It is. So I don't intend to necessarily have a greatest of all time conversation about the bantamweights when I lay out the show today. But the Weekly Scraps, Aljamain Sterling's podcast, put out a question suggesting that if Aljamain Sterling beats Henry Cejudo in less than 3 weeks now, that he is the greatest bantamweight of all time. And when Trevin 5-Star Jones or whomever it was got an opportunity to fight Cody Garbrandt recently, he said, there aren't that many former champions at 135 pounds. Never mind who might be the greatest of all time. Now, Dominic Cruz is one of my best friends. Certainly to me, he's the guy, but he hasn't competed all that often in the UFC. So I would say unequivocally, if Aljamain Sterling adds a Henry Cejudo scalp to his resume on May 6th, Aljamain Sterling's the greatest bantamweight of all time.
I think it's a no-brainer.
It really is.
It really is a no-brainer. You know, I don't think we need the weekly scraps to tell us that. I think it's 100% a no-brainer. It really is, and you know, I think we got a kid with a lot of confidence. Again, the adversity he's been through, I think, only made him stronger. You know, it's that old saying, "Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger." I think he's an example of that, and I'm really super excited for this fight.
I really bring that up in the context of how much is on the line with this fight against Henry Cejudo. What type of Henry Cejudo are you expecting? I mean, you expect this guy to be in the best shape of his life? Come on.
I 100% expect him to be in the best shape of his life. I don't think Henry's stupid. I think he's a student of the game, too. I like listening to him talk. He's very practical. I think he keeps it simple. And I think that's the way he's going to approach this fight. But he's 100% going to be in shape. If he's not... Oh,
he'll be in shape. Neuroforce 1. Yeah, no, I was totally messing around. Again, I got to be careful, right? No, but it is interesting. You see, he got a huge cut early on in training camp. I don't know if you saw any of the videos. So he was stitched up for much of this training camp, which maybe is a non-factor, but to me, I think it's a factor. But I'm fascinated to see how he comes back, just given the long layoff. I'm fascinated to sit down with Henry in a fighter meeting and find out what his motivation is right now. Certainly adding a win over Aljamain Sterling and becoming a 2-time UFC bantamweight champion is a huge thing. But does he just see this as a springboard to featherweight to try to become C4? Is he coming back for monetary reasons? You know, I just think it's interesting, the timing, the division, and everything else.
Yeah, I think, look, I think money's always at the top of the equation. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
he's been out for a couple of years. Doesn't look like he's been killing. We don't really know, but it doesn't look like he's been killing it with anything. Wasn't he supposed to go into real estate or something? It seemed like he had a game plan when he retired. I'm not sure that came to fruition.
Right.
But if it didn't, I think that's probably why, you know, he feels like this is a good fight for him. He feels like it is a springboard. Maybe if he wins that, he goes on to something bigger. So I think he's a guy that's, you know, playing chess and looking down the line a little bit for sure. Yep.
Global pandemic, as Cody suggests, probably didn't help as far as his real estate endeavors. But yeah, it will be interesting. Yeah. Sometimes you don't always get the right answers. I love Henry. We have a good relationship. I've tried to get him on the podcast in the lead up to this fight. And I think his focus is on his YouTube channel, and he has politely denied that request. Maybe if I go with your boy Aljo directly, he'll actually come on the program.
Aljo, he'll 100% come on the program.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on Max Holloway. Because just another chapter in a career of brilliance for one of the greatest featherweights of all time, Ray.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he made that. He took a tough kid. Allen looked good. He definitely deserved to be there. I think it'll be a great learning experience for him and growing fight. But man, I'm going to say, look, it was. I don't know I think it was a close fight, but Max just made it look like a sparring session where he was playing around. That's the craziness to me, is that he took a real contender who looks like he hits like, you know, a freight train. He just, the way, you know, Kenny, the way he no-sells getting hit is unbelievable too. Like if the volume is turned down, you're not listening to the announcers go, "Oh, what a shot." You're going to think nothing happened. He doesn't even flinch. He acts like it's nothing. The fight's over. He's talking like he's 3 weeks before the fight. I thought it was incredible for a variety of reasons that he just took a talented kid and made it look really simple. And, you know, the last couple of seconds when that guy really wanted to throw down, he threw down with him and knocked him down. So, you know, I think it was his plan to go in, like he said, and hit, not get hit. Didn't exactly go his way, but he kind of, to me, made it look easy.
Kenny, speaking of not getting hit, I'm not sure there's any professional sport in the world whose elite athletes train or work towards a common goal so differently. And I bring it up in the context of Max Holloway, who doesn't spar, juxtaposed against somebody like Dominic Cruz, who needs to spar tons and tons and tons of rounds over 6 months to get right. And Kenny, I'm not suggesting that one approach is better than the other, but it's crazy in a sport at this level that some guys don't spar and some guys feel like it's the lifeblood of their whole training camp.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, not only the way that they run camps, the way the coaches run camps, but also I think, you know, how many years they've been in the game.
Without a doubt.
Think, you know, it's like Robbie Lawler, after coming from, you know, the Militic Fighting Systems camps for all those years, he didn't want to spar after that. Like he realized that he needed to, and it worked for him. It worked for him, and it worked for certain people. But at some point, like especially early on in your career, I was probably sparring like 5 times a week, honestly. Nothing crazy. I'm not trying to like knock each other out every single day, but that helped me. And then over time, I didn't have to do as much, right? So it depends. Everyone's different. But as far as like sharpening your sword and getting ready for a fight, it's in my mind, it has to be a large aspect of your camps.
I'll tell you. And again, if you're a Wonder Boy Thompson, they look, first of all, if you have to define sparring, they're play sparring for sure. They're not maybe going in there with the intent of bringing in new guys and testing themselves that way, but they're 100% play sparring. They're getting the timing down. Wonder Boy never really sparred that hard. He's got the length. He's got, the weight. I think the guys that are on the outside that can fight on the outside, like Max is a tall guy. He's got a lot of fights. He was always active. Yeah, so it's almost like in Thailand, Kenny. They're always fighting once a month. Why are they sparring? So they develop that play sparring. So the guys that are active, they don't really have to spar it because they just fought 3 months ago. It's not like, Dominic would get injured. He'd be out for 2 years. Yeah, he has to get those juices flowing. How is he not going to do that? He has to spar. And then you have to bring in the right sparring partners if you want to do that and make sure that nothing's crazy. But I think there's a certain type of fighter like the Holloways, the Wonder Boy Thompsons that can get away with it because what they do so good, that it's not that important to them. But they are in the gym play sparring every day. I've seen it even in my gym. We got guys that do that, but every day they're playing around. They're not banging it out every day, but they're certainly getting their timing and punches are coming at them. It's not like you can't think that Max Holloway just did strength and conditioning and did nothing. He's playing around with people for sure. You could see it in his movement, but he's been, how many fights? This guy's been around forever at this point. We were talking about his fight with Dennis Bermudez yesterday. Yeah. Think about how long ago was that? Conor McGregor at 45. Those days are gone.
And his style.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken. Yeah.
Oh, and I was going to say, and his style of fighting, I think, first of all, it's like he's proven his toughness like 80 fights
Without
ago.
A doubt.
So I think he knows how he's going to respond. And I think because of his style, because of the way that he fights, he stays in the pocket, he trades with you. I think in that case, it serves him well, similar to like Robbie Lawler, where, they've accrued a lot of damage over the years that they're trying to minimize that as much as possible and really trying to work on technical skills and things like that. But as Ray said, that there's no way he doesn't do some kind of sparring, whether it's play sparring or drills and things like that.
Yeah. And again, if your guy has a good chin, even better, right? Yeah. But if you can't take a punch and you think you're going in there without like the flight time of sparring, the first time you get hit, it's going to be a disaster. So there's certain guys you could probably profile them at this point and know who they are.
Hey guys, how's my audio? Pretty good now. My mic just went off, so hopefully you guys can hear me.
Oh, well,
I hear you perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so Billy Quarantello had a tough weekend at the office. Edson Barboza gets it done with a huge knee at 2:37 of round 1. Billy Q acknowledged it as a mistake on social media. Highest profile fight of his career. Barboza proving that he is still able to get it done on a pretty elite level. Billy Quarantello is about a 2-1 favorite here. You know him well, Ray. What were your thoughts on the co-main event?
My thoughts on the co-main event is I think Billy's style, the way that fight was going, like if he didn't even go for the takedown, I think he eventually would have been a war of attrition that I think he would have won. It looked like he was pressing him back. He was getting off his shots. I think he did the same, maybe takedown a couple of times in a row, and Edson caught him with the knee. He just got caught. I think that fight, people are going to disagree. I think it was going in his favor. I really do, because I think he's that fighter that has to absorb punishment, but he could certainly dish it out. And I don't think Edson's at the point now where he could take that type of pressure for 3 rounds. So I think mixing the takedowns was a beautiful strategy, but I think Billy probably would have out-toughed him. But with that being said, just hats off to Edson, man. He did catch him with the knee, and he is one of the scariest fighters. I don't know about now, but back in the day, he was not playing around, this whipping those kicks. But guys get older, things slow down. which was part of the fascinating thing with Max. I think you were saying, Kenny, you saw like kind of kinks in his armor. Those kinks he's hiding them well, I think, if he's got them. I don't think he's the aggressive Max, but man, he's still in there and you can't really touch him too often and he could always offset you. And, I think, Edson Barboza's game, I know him all over the place. Edson Barboza's game is like a power playing game, right? He's smashing those kicks. He's ripping good body combinations with his hands. And that's the first thing to probably go, right? So I think Billy, it looked like that fight was going his way until he got kneed. I could be 100% wrong, but Billy's a tough, in-your-face type of guy. And I think, those are the fights that Edson has trouble with. Guys coming forward. Normally have a little more power. They have the big right hands that he just can't take. And I don't know. I think he'll come back stronger from that fight. So hats off to both guys.
Kenny, some suggesting Billy Q got a little bit sloppy there on that sequence that ended the fight, but Barboza did say in some post-fight interview that he had drilled that knee for 8 weeks. And say what you want about American Top Team. They've realized wild success, but they are nothing if not strategists, right? Like a lot of these guys are really thinkers, film studiers. It's a big win for Edson Barboza. He had a window, and man, did he fucking close the show. He's got one of the best highlight reels in the history of the sport.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ATT, they clearly did their homework. They had a phenomenal weekend. And, I've mentioned this before, but it's a paradox, right? The things that make us who we are, they're our strengths, but they also could be our weakness. And I think Billy Q is extremely aggressive. It's what makes him such a problem to deal with. But also in doing so, he can be a little bit too reckless sometimes. And Barboza at his age is clearly still very, very dangerous. I thought he was fighting the right fight. He just threw himself out of position. He was in line for that knee. Barboza caught him, man. And obviously they must have seen something in tape that gave them the idea that would be a good thing to throw. And it landed perfectly. Billy Q is so dang tough, man. He makes every single fight exciting. And for Barboza, who's been around in the sport a long time, who has experienced a lot of ups and downs, to see him come back to also one of the nicest guys in the sport, you got to feel happy for him as well. But Billy Q will be back. He'll be back. He'll be stronger and tougher than ever. And, it was a great fight while it lasted.
Yeah, well put. I agree 100%. And really, two of the nicest guys in the game. So again, I don't want to take away anything from Barboza. He timed that knee perfectly. Hats off to those guys for game plan. And I did like what I was seeing at the beginning of the fight. I think he had him on the back foot, which is where you got to put Barboza. You can't let that guy come forward and get really aggressive with his striking, because he does everything too fast and too hard. And he got caught, so I think, it wasn't a prolonged beating. I think he jumps right back in there.
And is your guy, Matt Frivola, not the greatest teammate in the history of professional sports, right? With Billy Q every step of the goddamn way.
Yeah, those guys got a great friendship. That's why me, I'm always pushing it. I love the friendships in the gym. And, those guys, Araujo and Marab, that's Billy Q and Frivola, they got a great thing going, and they'll have that thing going forever.
Yeah. A lot of camaraderie, all spearheaded by the great Ray Longo. All right, a couple more things before we get you go. Francis Marshall coming up here, top of the hour. If we were on the radio, top of the hour would actually mean something. Anik and Florian podcast presented by DraftKings. Pedro Munoz over Chris Gutierrez, 30-27 across the board. Another fight similarly priced to Edson Barboza and Billy Quarantello. And once again, it's an American top team veteran reminding an oncoming contender that they're still there. What'd you think of Pedro, Raymond?
I thought Pedro fought beautifully. I thought he got the job done. I think 30-27, I think, was the scores. That was perfect. Happy to see it, man. He's had some tough fights. I think he had a couple of fights that could have went his way that didn't. So it's good to see him get back in the win column or stay in the win column, because I thought he did great. I thought he controlled the pace of that whole fight.
Kenny, a little bit of a crossroads fight for these two bantamweights. A lot of people felt like Gutierrez was going to take that next step at 135 pounds. Instead, it's Munoz humbling him a little bit. I still think Gutierrez, one of the best in this division, and I still think he's going to find himself in a big fight. But Munoz proven that he's still got plenty of hunger left to try to make his own run here, potentially at bantamweight.
No question about that. I think Munoz really surprised him, and when he rocked Gutierrez, I think it took away a lot of his confidence, man. He was moving good, and again, you look at Gutierrez, and 7-8 fights in a row that he had as far as wins go. He fought completely different against those guys that he did against Munoz. I don't know if it was maybe giving Munoz too much respect, and then after, so he was a little hesitant, I thought, to begin with, and then you see him get caught with that one shot, and he just wasn't throwing a whole lot of shots at Munoz. Like, it was almost like he was in a sparring fight, and then he started to fight to not lose, and that's always a dangerous thing, and we can all fall victim to that. But I think Gutierrez didn't give himself enough credit, and I don't know if he fought Munoz. I think he more kind of wanted to hang in there with Munoz, and I don't know. And again, I don't want to take away from Munoz. I thought Munoz was clearly energized and realized that he needed that win. Fought a great fight, was always kind of a step ahead, fought hard, and won pretty much every single round. So it was a great performance from Munoz, who deserves to stay in the UFC and deserves to be one of the top bantamweights out there.
All right, Ray, before we let you go, Matt Frevola, Drew Dober. We know about Dober's power. We know that he has been hittable at times. It's a fascinating fight. A lot of people expect them to just bite down on the gum shield and meet in the middle, but I got to think that you've been in Frevola's ear about those first 120 seconds and how to navigate those.
Well, sometimes you could be in a guy's ear, John, and you still don't know what's going to happen.
Right,
but, his natural predilection is to do exactly what you just said, but we're working on it. I think you'll see a different Frevola, and he's using his head, and the combination of brains and his power, I think, will serve him really good in this fight.
All right, and before I let you go, you got nothing on Teddy Atlas when it comes to your win, but you are very short-lipped when it comes to your guys. Like, if I ask you now about Brandon Royval, you'll give me 2 minutes. But when I start to get on your guys, talk about Matt Frevola, your whole tone and tenor changes.
Look, I think I try to keep it as short as possible with everything. That's why I love listening to Kenny. He does. I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to do a Kenny, and I'm just going to go on with a couple of things. I'm going to look at a fight and write it, but I just look at he controlled the pace. He was winning the fight. I don't know what else you want me to say, but some.
I want you to talk to me about Brandon Royval.
Royval's a dog, man.
Title shot, man. Raw dog.
Who made that guy an underdog in that fight? He's tough, that kid. He's always been tough. He's got great experience. He's 100% a problem in that division.
Yeah, I think Ray did just drop a predilection. Maybe you were going to say proclivity.
Predilection.
Or
predilection, I said.
Predilection. I'll have to look that up. Predilection. That is a big word. I know proclivity. I know pension. What is it?
Predilection.
Wow. So, Kenny, did you see?
Just make sure I used it right.
Hey, Kenny, real quick. Did you see Brandon Royval over Matthews Nicolau?
I did.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. Like, I know flyweight's a little bit crowded. We're going to get Brandon Moreno and Alexandre Pantoja second time for the belt. But at this point, like, Royval, promoter's dream, man. He's the most watchable guy on the roster. Have him fight for the belt.
I couldn't believe when I found out he was an underdog.
Yeah.
Only because we're not allowed to bet, so I don't really look anymore.
Well, if you do want to help us fund Ray Longo's trip to Hawaii, we're going to start a fund. Get Ray to the 50th state, and we'll see if by the end of 2023 we can send you and your wife to Hawaii on the pod.
These guys are the best, man. Wow. I feel the love. I feel the love every week. This is phenomenal. All right, guys, I'm out of here.
Thank you, buddy.
Take it easy. All right, have a great rest of the week.
There he is, the Ray Longo Minute, every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So I was talking to my wife last night, and as we talk about raising money for Ray to go to Hawaii, I wanted to come up with something that we could do, and perhaps opening it up to the listenership and the viewership is the way to go, but almost like I wanted to do like a scholarship for like a prelim fighter of the year in the UFC, like the Anik and Florian podcast scholarship, where at the end of a year, we would give like $5,000 to a fighter who has not competed on the main card. By the way, Ken-Flo's never fought on a prelim in his life, but this would be a fighter that is coming up. Maybe there's some hard life circumstances. And based upon what they accomplished in 2023 as a prelim fighter in the UFC, we give them $5,000 at the end of the year. I thought it would be a cool promotion for the show. And I think, too, we would get inundated with requests from the listenership. Oh, you should give it to this guy. You don't know what he's been through. So I thought it would be a cool thing. But at this point, we need to move on, because now joining us on the guest line is a man who we've been looking forward to talking to. Look how fucking handsome this guy is. Sorry for the foul language, but he immediately elevates the whole room. This man's first professional knockout came at a good time last December when he made his UFC debut, UFC featherweight out of Jersey City, New Jersey. Francis Marshall is with us. Good afternoon, my man. Welcome to Fight Week. We appreciate a few minutes. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure, man. So I was watching an interview this morning, and I hate to sort of start with a melancholy tone, but your uncle passed away on that Thursday, 2 days before you made your UFC debut. And it seems like you guys were pretty close. He was your dad's brother. And I guess I'm just curious how you navigated that circumstance when you found out, and was anybody in your family maybe inclined to not tell you, just given the magnitude of what you were walking into that Saturday night?
Yeah, I think it was more of like, don't mention it. Don't say anything till after the fight. And then that Thursday morning, I was just driving around with my dad. I think we were going to a couple stores, and my uncle lived in Orlando. So I was like, oh, how's Uncle Greg doing? Whatever. Because he wasn't doing too well at that point anyway. And then that's when he told me, he was like, oh, Greg died last night. And then, so I don't think they were going to tell me, and then kind of just put it in the back of my head and focus on the fight first.
Wow. Well, man, did you focus on the fight? And I know you acknowledged some maybe pre-fight UFC jitters, but any nerves seemed to dissipate pretty quickly. How did you feel overall about the way you navigated that first fight week?
I felt pretty good overall. I mean, it was a lot different than usual, a lot bigger lights, more stuff to do. But overall, I definitely had the pre-fight jitters and nerves. But I think after a couple minutes into the first round, it kind of shook them off.
So, Matt, you've been training with Kurt Pellegrino. How long have you been training with Kurt, and how has that helped you, get into the UFC, man?
I've been with him for 10 years now. So just having him in the corner and helping out in all the fights, with all his experience, it's definitely helped me a lot get to the UFC, I think.
Yeah, he's been talking about you a long time, man. So was that always a part of your plan? Like, I want to get into the UFC, or was there a certain point where you're like, okay, this is a realistic goal now?
It was always a goal and a dream of mine. Like, that was always my vision, to fight in the UFC and chase a UFC championship. So it's always been there. It's just a matter of time of when it was going to happen.
How do you break down your next opponent, man?
So he's more of a lanky kickboxer, southpaw, and then I'm a shorter orthodox wrestler, grappler. So I think it's going to be more of that, like, grappler versus striker matchup again, something like that. So he throws a lot of kicks, a lot of punches, very unorthodox, I guess, in his kicks and stuff. So we've been game planning a lot for him.
UFC featherweight Francis Marshall with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast, 7-0. You can see him fight on ESPN Plus this weekend, live from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. I want to go back to your Contender Series win in August of 2022, because when we sat down in our fighter meeting, you sort of mentioned that fight forced you to open up with your boxing. And then you go and produce a knockout like that. How do you navigate that now? Falling in love with the hands, as DC says, Gilbert Durinho Burns loves that knockout life. How do you navigate that now that you've produced this huge knockout on the world's biggest stage?
I think it's just more of sticking to the game plan and not getting too overzealous looking for a knockout in the next one. Just try to stick to the game plan of what have always worked for us and what we've always done. And if it opens up, if I rock him with a right hand or a left hand and you see him wobbling a little bit, then try to go for the finish. But I'm not going to look to blow my load on another knockout. Just
right. So you're a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Do you still train in the gi or no?
Not as much as Kurt would like me to.
Right. That's a hard thing to admit in front of the 7-stripe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Kenny Florian, as well. How many stripes they put on those belts, by the way? How many stripe? What's the max stripe, Kenny?
I don't know. I mean, eight.
All right. Okay.
9. I have no idea anymore.
So, but you do have 4 wins by submission, all by way of the rear naked choke. And I guess I'm curious how you would describe your offensive jiu-jitsu, because we do spend a lot of time on this show talking about offensive jiu-jitsu and how a lot of guys just don't have submissions, man. So it seems like the rear naked choke is your go-to, but how would you describe your jiu-jitsu game?
Definitely a lot of pressure, top dominant, like a lot of pressure passing. And then once you open up the passing, then I just try to, for MMA purposes, more punches and elbows. And then that's when you get them to turn, and then you could sink in the choke.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of pressure on them and just really just scoring as much as possible.
So your dad, Steve, your mom, Colleen, your siblings, I know you have an older brother and an older sister. What was their reaction after you did what you did in your UFC debut?
Oh, they were very happy. They were excited. My sister was actually at Miami airport, and she was watching it. And I think some lady was recording her while she was going crazy. Because, well, she thought she was just that much of a fan that she was going crazy for a random person. So actually, kind of funny, but yeah, they were all pretty excited.
That's cool. So you started privates with Pellegrino when you were 14. You were born March 3rd, 1999. How about that, Ken-Flo? Better year to be born than, say, 1976, right? 1999.
Yeah, oh my God.
But what did Kurt say after the UFC debut? I'd imagine that that you gave him something to work with, even though the result was outstanding.
I mean, not much negative, I would say. I mean, he's not that he's a negative person, but not much like to work on, more just like getting the nerves out next time, just being opening up sooner and just listening to the corner like I did. Like he's like, see, I told you it would work. Sit down on that right hand. And that's what landed.
So I consider Kurt Pellegrino to be somewhat of a personal rival. We were at Kenny Florian's wedding in South Carolina, and there actually became need for a last-minute replacement groomsman. And Kenny chose Kurt. Now, in 2023, I think he would choose me, but he chose Kurt at the time. So I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but the juxtaposition between you, clean cut, and I'm not saying that Kurt's not handsome, but Pellegrino's all over the fucking joint. And he's got this clean-cut kid in his corner. It's just an interesting dynamic between the two of you guys. I don't know if I'm even looking for a comment, but it is interesting when I see you two together, because it does seem a little bit like an odd couple to me.
It's like opposites attract,
Yeah, there you go.
A little overgrown, bushy, and clean-cut, young.
Yeah. So you're still a firefighter. You're still doing the 24 hours on and the 72 hours off. Is that right?
Yep. Up in Jersey City. I'm still up there. I'm actually off now until after the fight, which is nice.
And you've had a lot of support from the department. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
So that 24 on, 72 off, a lot of our listeners can't really relate to that. I essentially stay up 24 hours, usually for the UFC events right after the live event. But how do you navigate those final few hours in terms of making sure that you're sharp as a tack when you need to be?
Like final few hours at work?
That shift. Yeah. Like hour number 21 of a 24-hour shift.
Yeah, it starts to get a little draining, but you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. I mean, I over the years, I've kind of grown accustomed to it. It's kind of just like habit now. So just waking up in the middle of the night, it's not always the greatest thing, but I mean, it's not always something crazy going on. Sometimes it's just like a nuisance alarm and stuff like that, but still got to get up, go out, and go through the whole process.
Yeah. Some of our listeners suggesting that you're a better firefighter than Stipe, a bit more agile, but we're not going to ask you to comment on that. Before I let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts on Raul Rosas Jr. and also the Max Holloway Arnold Allen main event, because I think as we spin it forward for you in this division, I'm curious how you feel about the elite fighters. But when you see Raul Rosas Jr. get to the UFC at 18 as a young fighter yourself, and you see him realize success and then kind of fall flat in his second UFC appearance, are you thinking he's there way too early? Or like, what is your thought when you see like an 18-year-old kid kicking off a UFC pay-per-view in Miami?
I mean, the pay-per-view thing I saw with a lot of people was a little bit iffy. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Curtis, I saw a lot of people saying they should have been on there. But for him to make it at 18, I mean, good for him. If someone presented me the opportunity when I was 17 years old to fight in the Contender Series and then give me a contract after that fight when I was 18, I would have 100% took that. I wouldn't have said, no, I'm too young, let me wait. I would have jumped all over it like he did. And that's good for him. But I think there's a lot of growing time for him and experience and kind of building into his own body. Because at 18, when I was 18 to now, even just 6 years later, I feel completely different just physically. So I think he's got a lot of room to work. I mean, it's not the end of the career. I mean, you have one loss isn't going to kill you. He's got a lot of people behind him. I'm sure a lot of great coaches and people want to go work with him and help him out. So I think he has a bright future ahead of him.
It's a good answer from a bright young man. And before we let you go, to what extent are you keeping tabs on the UFC as a whole, the elite fighters in your division? Like, are you locked in like the rest of us watching Max Holloway, Arnold Allen last Saturday night?
A little. I watched that yesterday when I was working out. But so I usually like to watch most of the featherweight fights just to keep an eye on where everyone's at and how everyone's doing. So it's just, those are probably the main ones that I watch the most.
All right, well, you can see Francis Marshall fight French striker William Gomis live on ESPN Plus this weekend, man. Eventually, I think you got to pivot away from that Pellegrino cap, but no, I'm just kidding. Hey, thank you for the time, my man. You know you got supporters in this room, and we'll be watching live on Saturday night. We wish you all the best, and we sincerely appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
There he is, Francis Fire Marshall, with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Got to take a couple digs at Pellegrino, do I not?
I love it.
Somebody,
he'll be firing back.
I think it was Jeff Gallo who wrote a tweet, and there's a reference to some movie, but he said at, I think, UFC 174 that Michael Chiesa looks like he has been living on a bus in Alaska eating poisonous plants, right? I'm sure that reference is going to hit home with a lot of our viewers. Into the Rising Sun. There's some movie. I don't know.
Chris McCandless. Yeah. Yeah, the story of Chris McCandless.
Okay, so Kurt Pellegrino, at times, looks like he's been living on a bus in Alaska eating poisonous plants. And then he's got this Francis Marshall, who is clean as a whistle, born March 3rd, 1999. But we appreciate Francis Marshall joining us today.
So and
just having a little bit of fun. Everybody's so sensitive, right? And my twin brother's going to be like, you're fucking sensitive, But hopefully Kurt can still take a joke. He certainly could take a joke back in the day. Gosh, can you imagine though? I got to sit through that wedding and they call Pellegrino's number Cody instead of mine. Dude looks like he's been on a bus in Alaska eating poisonous plants. I'm dressed to the nines.
What was he gonna have? I was gonna have Pellegrino announce us when we came in. I mean, come on, I gotta
right. Use people where you need them. Yeah, that's good.
I would have used you three different ways if I could.
Man. No, I just have fun with that. All right, so these UFC Fight Nights are going to keep on coming this weekend. It is UFC Fight Night. Pavlovich versus Blaydes, live from the UFC Apex. To that end, let's get to the main event challenge.
It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights. I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
You got a bad mood. We got the cure. Big Gun Brian Petrie with us for the main event challenge. I do believe if I was in a really bad mood, you'd probably be one of my first phone calls. I might even FaceTime just to see that jovial fucking mug,
I appreciate that. You got a couple friends of mine calling me Billy now from last podcast, so I appreciate that a little bit there. They call me Billy Big Gun. So thank you, Johnny. I'll take it. Hey. I'll take it any kind of way I can get it.
So we appreciate everybody dealing with me through my technical difficulties over the last several weeks. I'm trying to move into a studio, hopefully within the next couple of months. But anybody who thought that I was so rudely cutting off Ken-Flo during the main event challenge last week, it was nothing more than an audio issue. I assure you, I would not cut off a man as dangerous as that multiple times over. We did repurpose the main event challenge on the DraftKings YouTube channel, if indeed you wanted to ingest that in its totality, to see how poorly these guys did last week as we update the standings. Petrie 2-4, Ken-Flo 2-4. Am I right?
Yeah.
I'm always nervous. I'm going to screw it up.
I guess.
Billy Petrie had a nice hit on Pedro Munoz, plus 180.
Nice.
Otherwise, fairly forgettable week. minus 270. Your total nut minus 28.55. Ken-Flo's highlight, the hit on Azamat Murzakanov plus 155. But Ken-Flo did take losses on Clay Guida, Tanner Bozer, Chris Gutierrez, and Billy Quarantello. So minus 325 for the week puts Ken-Flo at minus 570 overall. By the way, how about Clay Guida? Mr. Congeniality he may be, but try to hijack the entire broadcast after being on the wrong end of a 30-27 times 3. Brian Petrie, your thoughts on that?
I thought Dana said it best. I'm like, oh shit, we're getting another retirement. He took his gloves off. He's 41. You expect it. And he goes, nah, I just want to say happy birthday to whoever. And I thought Dana handled that great. He's like, dude, we're running a live show here, my guy. Like, what are you doing? And then I kind of love Bill Algio's like weird retirement just to kind of dig at KC a little bit. KC's Cincinnati's rivals now too. They just beat Philly in the Super Bowl. So I kind of love the KC dig there. Went a little heel turn on us, which I love.
Well, and again, people are talking about Bill Algio. It was a great performance. It was the fight of the night, but people by and large are talking about Billy Algio because of the post-fight interview. All right. First fight for us. Welterweight banger to kick off the main card. Jeremiah Wells minus 135. Matthew Semmelsberger plus 115. Those Semmelsberger football highlights hit hard. Used to hit like a truck as a strong safety for Marist. He's won 3 of 4, coming off a big win over Jake Matthews last December. Wells on the other side, 3-0 in the UFC with as many stoppage wins. Wells, Billy. Wells, Brian, 11-2-1 overall, but he is 36 years old, so time is of the essence. How do you handicap this one, Wells and Semmelsberger?
Listen, I like Jeremiah Wells. He's from that Philly crew. That Philly crew's popping right now with, Pat Sabatini. You got Sean Brady, and he's another one. He came to the UFC a little late, and I'm not sure if he started MMA late or not, but 3-0 in UFC, knocking out Court McGee. Not a fucking easy thing to do. That dude's tough. And he got Semmelsberger, Semi the Jedi, Frederick Maryland, stand up. You got one. I think this kid's good. I really do. The Chaos Williams fight, he took 91 shots, didn't drop down. Chaos Williams knocks out horses on the weekend. I mean, the dude can hit like a tank. And then you got the Jake Matthews fight where Jake Matthews went against Andre Fijo, and that was the best Matthews we've seen. I was like, holy shit, this is the guy we've been waiting for. Goes in against Sellenberger as a decent little favorite. Of course, I put all my money on Jake Matthews, and Sellenberger rises up, hits hard. He's athletic. His grappling's good. I don't think Jeremiah Wells is the best wrestler. I think he's good on the ground, good rear naked choke. He is a finisher, but I just see Sellenberger being too big and too athletic to really get it to the ground. And as long as his volume is up, because sometimes he does kind of watch a little bit, as long as his volume up, I'll take Sellenberger here at that dog price. I like it. It's a little puppy dog, just a little puppy dog, not a juicy dog, but I'll take Sellenberger.
Ken-Flo, Jeremiah Wells, Matthew Semmelsberger. Who do you like?
Yeah, I like Semmelsberger as well, man. Like BP said, that last fight kind of sold me. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet, going with Semmelsberger as well.
All right, next up at lightweight, and I will admit to being absolutely floored by how wide this price is. It's come down a little. Bobby King Green minus 280, Jared Flash Gordon plus 235. UFC appearance number 21 for the King, who can now lay claim to more than 10 years on the UFC roster. Gordon on the other side, really, Brian, should have won 5 of his last 6, but instead he was on the wrong end of that Paddy Pimblett split. So now he's lost 2 of his last 3. Big spot for Jared Gordon as underdog. Who do you like at 155 pounds?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. When this price opened, you're like, wait, what? What's going on here? And then the props aren't out yet, but if you get Jared Gordon by decision, that's going to be 4 or 5 to 1. If you're a value guy, put a 25 spot right there, get $100, a little quick honey. But I'm kind of trying to switch things up because I'm a little cold. So I took away the numbers and I went down the fighting and what skill versus skill here. And Jared Gordon is a very talented fighter. He's a pressure fighter. He can get you down the Paddy fight. I felt like if you would have done more on the ground, I thought it would have been a clear cut decision for him. I felt like takedowns, just getting a takedown is not enough anymore. You got to show some damage. You got to do things. Bobby Green does have some good takedown offense. Don't let it fool you. This guy is some good takedown offense. He's coming off a fight with Drew Dober where he hurt Drew Dober a few times. A guy who was a volume puncher is all starting to find a little bit of power. Then you got clipped by Dober. Before that, he fought Islam, made a bag. Short notice. What are you going to do with Islam? But before that, you got Nasrat Haqparast, where he pieced him up 116, and then he knocked out Ale Quinta, which I know Ale Quinta is not, that wasn't the real Raging Al, but still, that's a finished win. And Bobby's slick in there, man. He likes to put his back against the cage, and he's very slick, and I like that. And Jared Gordon has been knocked out before, 3 times in the UFC. The one thing, though, when I'm breaking down this fight is there seems to be a little bit of a cloud over Jared Gordon, right? And this could be a good thing or a bad thing. The Paddy fight is kind of hovering over him. Paddy called him out from the hospital bed. Now, either that's going to motivate him to want to get that one back, or he's like, I just want a Paddy fight. Fuck all this. My confidence is there. I know he works hard, but Bobby Green's tricky. The line is super wide. I'm going Bobby Green, though. Going Bobby Green.
And I remind our Anik Florian podcast viewers and listeners that these gentlemen can abstain from picking a fight. They just have to pick the main event. Jared Gordon plus 235, Bobby Green minus 280. Kenny Florian, who do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a great breakdown and a great background on the fight and the fighters. Jared Gordon is a tough dude, man. I think where he'll be at a disadvantage, though, greatly in this fight is in the speed category. Bobby Green's going to be way faster here. I also think that Jared Gordon, while he's getting much better at takedowns, I don't know if it's enough to be able to take down Bobby Green consistently, keep him there, get good position, and be a legit threat. I think that would be the path to victory here, because Bobby Green isn't known for his ground game, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to take him down and keep him down. So I like Bobby Green here as well. I think this fight will probably stay on the feet. I think a tough Jared Gordon will outlast him probably to the end, but Bobby Green certainly has pop in those punches, so watch out there. But I like Green here as well.
And a ton of experience for Bobby Green. 3 more appearances last year. Lost to Islam Makhachev and, of course, Drew Dober to close out his 2022. All right. Featured bout at middleweight. Brad Tavares minus 155. Bruno Silva plus 135. 22nd UFC appearance for Brad Tavares. Coming off, pretty brutal loss to Dracus du Plessis last July. Tavares then pulled out of the scheduled bout versus Gregory Rodriguez. That was to be in Rio back in January. On the other side, Bruno Silva, somewhat underappreciated, most famous for fighting Alex Pereira to a decision. That was 13 months ago. Then he was submitted by GM3 last August. So now Silva trying to avoid a third straight L here, BP. Who do you have?
Yeah, I love this fight. Brad Tavares mixes up well, but he's not. You look at his last 2 fights, he hasn't really attempted takedowns. In the Justice du Plessis fight, he got dropped 3 times. He got rocked a lot in that fight. He's just so tough. I mean, and then you got Bruno Silva, who was kind of the guy coming in. This dude touches you, he puts you out. He fought Pereira, who some people out there maybe think he won that fight. I did not, but it was a close fight. He went to a decision with Pereira, but then he just looks like a dud against GM3, and that's what GM3 kind of does. Either he's not on or he's on, and he was piecing up Silva on the feet, and then obviously took him to ground and submitted. And Silva's cardio lacked a little bit. I think this is do or die for Silva. I think if he loses this one, that's 3 in a row. I think the UFC is going to go, you know what? You maybe aren't who we thought you are. Go win somewhere else and come back. That's what I think. He's an exciting fighter. He punches. He has big punching power. And that's what's the deciding factor here. I'm surprised he's a dog here. So I'm taking Silva because Brad Tavares, even though he's only 35, has been in the UFC for a long time. A lot of miles on him. And du Plessis, who I don't think is the biggest power punch in the world, rocked him as many times. I think if Silva touches him, it's going to be a problem. So give me Silva in this fight.
Ken-Flo, 19 career wins by knockout or TKO for Bruno Silva, who I also believe is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. How do you handicap his chances here as an underdog against the UFC credentialed and tested Brad Tavares?
Yeah, that one with Silva was a hard one for me to wrap my head around, because the one thing I was thinking, I was like, is he injured? Is something going on? What the heck's going on?
Oh, when he fought Alex.
No, GM3.
Oh,
Mershard.
When Bruno Silva fought Mershard. Okay.
Mershard,
yeah.
Got it.
So that was a little confused. But yeah, no, I thought he had a great fight against Pereira. I do not think he won that fight, but I do think he fought really well. I was like, man, this kid is tough. Tavares, he's been pretty consistent besides his like run in probably 2012, 2013, where he had some consistency. He's one of those guys that is very difficult to bet for or against. I think he can win this fight. But I think if we see a Silva that is motivated, that feels like he needs to have a great performance and is healthy, I think Silva wins that one too. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Silva here. I don't know. With Tavares, it's tough. It's tough to go against him just because he's a very good striker and he's tough. But I like Silva here.
All right, both guys like Silva at plus money this weekend. UFC Fight Night live on ESPN Plus. We'll have Petrie lead the co-main event, and then Ken-Flo will lead us on what is a huge fight at heavyweight to close the proceedings today. Co-main event first, though, at bantamweight. Ricky Simón minus 140, Song Yadong plus 120. Simón might just be my favorite fighter on the roster to watch, Bri. Just all offense all the time. Humbled Jack Shore in his last fight. Took his O with relative ease. He's won 5 in a row, yet still just number 10 in the world because of the depth in this division. Kind of needs Merab Dvalishvili to be champion. That would lay the foundation for a rematch. But Song Yadong on the other side, still only 25. Lost to Corey Sandhagen in his last fight. It was a main event last September. You going Ricky Simón, slight favorite here against Song Yadong.
Did Song Yadong start fighting UFC when he's 12? I mean, this guy's been and he's only 25. It's crazy. And you hit the nail on the head, John. I love me some Ricky Simón. Don't call him Simon. It's Simón, baby. This dude legitimately could almost be. I mean, listen, let's cut the bullshit, right? The reason he's ranked the way he is and the reason he's not getting talked about is he got knocked out by Uriah Faber. Right? He got knocked out in the first round by a 40-year-old Uriah Faber. Got caught, got knocked out, rebounded off that with a loss over Rob Font, which is no shame. Rob Font's a stud. The Merab fight was kind of murky waters, whatever that referee is, let's not bring that up because we don't get ready to pop on here. But this dude is legit. Like his wrestling is good. His grappling is really good. He's so heavy on top. He smothered and outclassed Jack Shore on the ground. And Jack Shore is supposed to be the guy on the ground. And Simón's doing this by putting punches together. He's finally finding his hands. We're knocked out Rafael Assunção, which is a good feather in his cap. I mean, this guy legitimately should be top 5 talent, in my opinion. He's going Song Yadong. He looked good against Corey Sandhagen, which is a step behind. I think Simón, I know Song Yadong does have good takedown defense. He's training with Team Alpha Male. Team Alpha Male's prepared for Simón before, but I think this pace is too much for Simón. I love this number 2 at minus 130. This is going to be a hammer spot for your boy. I'm not going to go too crazy because I'm down a little bit, but I'm going to go an extra uni on Simón because we need it, babe. We need it. And I think he's going to win by decision. Song's a tough dude, but I just think Simón's going to pull it out. I think he's better everywhere. Maybe lacks a little bit of the power, but give me Ricky Simón.
All right, so Brian Petrie, pretty bullish on Ricky Simón's chances. So when my twin brother Jason calls my cell phone, the song that plays is, you're as cold as ice, right? Petrie better get hot or we're going to have to have that be your ringtone as well.
That's
my brother's like my brother's perpetually frozen like Elsa when it comes to the sports book. So he's always cold as ice. Ken-Flo, co-main event. Who do you have?
Oh man, I got excited. I thought he was going to go with Yadong there at the very end, but I like Ricky Simón here as well. Here we are going the same freaking picks here, so I'm sorry about that. But Simón is he's a bad matchup for Yadong. I think he takes him down. And I think he wins this fight either by decision or by some kind of TKO. So Song is going to have issues with the grappling. I think he's going to be dangerous on the feet. I think don't sleep on him on the feet if Simón decides to stand up with him. But I think Ricky takes him down and wins this one.
By the way, this Anik Florian podcast parlay that has been featured on DraftKings Sportsbook, and a lot of people playing that, and we really appreciate it, even if it's a minimum wager. It means a lot. You guys don't consult me at all. Like, this would be one thing that maybe I could get in on, like off the record, behind the scenes. You guys don't consult me like at all. So, just throwing that out there.
What are we 1 for 3 on those parlays so far?
Yes.
Is that the deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
But these are long shot bets.
These are long. These aren't like parlays. Yeah, I mean, we're giving them over +4 every time, 4 to 1 on your money and more.
Yeah, these are long shot parlays, but that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get into this main event, guys. So I was on Sergey Pavlovich's Wikipedia page this morning, and there's a section about ape index, Kenny. Basically, it's your height relative to your reach. So that Sergey Pavlovich has like the best ape index of any UFC heavyweight, that he's 6'3", but his reach is 84 inches, which is John Jones's reach.
Yeah.
My twin brother actually measured our reach. He did it for us because we got the same reach. We got the same reach as DC, 72 inches. So I think we got a pretty good ape index based upon our height.
There we go.
But I thought it was kind of interesting that Pavlovich has this much reach on Curtis Blaydes, about 4 inches, and his hands are fast as hell. Betting line is Curtis Blaydes right now, minus 170 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Sergey Pavlovich, plus 145. Ken-Flo, Blaydes has won 3 in a row, 7 out of 8. I think he might be the best heavyweight of all time to have never fought for the belt, right? I mean, when is Curtis Blaydes going to realize a title fight? Pavlovich also closing in fast on a potential title fight of his own, Kenny. He's reeled off 5 straight wins since dropping his debut to Alistair Overeem back in 2018 in China. Huge spot for Pavlovich against Curtis Blaydes, who wins the heavyweight main event, Ken-Flo.
You're looking at a 74.5-inch reach over here, boys. I could touch you from here. Let's go. All right, here we go. So, listen, this is an interesting fight, man. This is a very tricky one. I think Curtis Blaydes, when he's on his game, man, watch out. I think he has been reinvigorated. He's obviously working on his overall skills. I think he's dangerous on the feet. He's dangerous on the ground. If he puts you on your back, good night. He's got great ground and pound and improving skills everywhere on the feet. So this is tricky. But Pavlovich is an absolute animal. He really hasn't been challenged at this point. And if I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, striking, I don't think Curtis Blaydes wants to be there. Is there anything in his grappling game? Does he have a grappling game? Yeah, he's got a wrestling background as well, and he's Russian. And, the Russians are, traditionally the best wrestlers in the world year after year. It's either them or the Iranians or the Americans, so they have that rich wrestling culture. He's going to be preparing for that. And, you talk about his physical attributes, that reach, that power, that speed. I don't know, man. This could be a future champ, and I think this is a great measuring tool to see where he's at. Give me the Russian guy.
Wow.
Whoa.
That was well executed, Ken-Flo. And I would also point out that Sergey Pavlovich was the backup for John Jones and Cedal Gane at UFC 285 in March.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oftentimes that doesn't mean everything, but it means something. It means something. Yeah. And I don't know if Curtis Blaydes even got a phone call to be a backup, but Pavlovich was the guy. Billy Petrie, whatever your name is. Ken-Flo thinks that that Pavlovich is going to cash this weekend. And we need a prediction from you.
I like Ivan Drago over here at the plus money. That's a great number, but your boy needs to go opposite Ken-Flo. So I'm going to go Blaydes. I have a thing in my notebook here that says quit fading Curtis Blaydes, because that's all I seem to do, and all he fucking does is win, right? He's got 3 losses, 2 to the same guy, once by Derek Lewis. The guy has a trouble dealing with power punches. However, Pavlovich, even though outside of UFC, he fought a lot of Sambo guys, a lot of good Russian wrestlers, and handled them well. Alistair Overeem got him down with a kind of a Michael Bisping cheeky takedown, right? It wasn't the best takedown. Kind of got him down and then finished him on the mat. If Curtis Blaydes can take him down and did what he did to Alistair Overeem, massacre him, butcher him on the ground, that's what I want to see. Blaydes is starting to feel himself. His hands look quick. I know we only got to see a little bit on the Tommy Aspinall fight, but he looked just super fast. And he said it best in Columbus when he fought Dawkins. He said, everyone thinks I'm going to wrestle. Now I'm going to start striking and mix it up. I think Pavlovich hasn't really fought anybody since Overeem that's willing or wanting to take him down. He gets all these first-round knockouts. What does he look like in the second round? What does he look like in the third round? A lot of guys haven't seen that yet. I think Curtis Blaydes is the guy to do that. Give me Blaydes. I also think Blaydes might be the hardest matchup for John Jones at heavyweight, considering the wrestling pedigree. Who's out wrestled Curtis Blaydes? John Jones is a big, strong dude. Maybe they won't take it there, but yeah, I want to see Curtis Blaydes get a title shot one of these days. The guy's putting in work, and give me Blaydes opposite Flo, even though I like the number on the Russian.
Yeah, if Curtis Blaydes beats Sergey Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall is closing fast, looks like maybe July will be his return, but gotta think Blaydes is going to find himself in a championship setting if he can get it done this weekend. All right, if you want more from Brian Petrie on Twitter at Brian Petrie MMA, also the MMA Takes podcast is his individual show. And I just would like to say in closing, on behalf of this Anik and Florian podcast family, I know it's been a heavy week for the Petrie clan.
Yes.
And specifically, I just wanted to acknowledge your mother, who has just dealt with a lot, and my condolences to the family. We've been thinking about you, and you're a real soldier for coming on with us today. So we appreciate you, brother.
No, I appreciate every single Anik and Florian listener who is now following me. I got a million DMs and nice messages, and the three of you guys, Cody, Kenny, and John, all sending me nice messages means a lot. This show is very important to me. You guys are important to me. I know it's so corny to say, oh, it's like family, because I've only really met John, twice, but this is family to me. I have a small family. I keep my inner circle small. So it feels really good to have support when stuff like this happens. And it means the world to me, guys. I really appreciate it.
My man. You'll always have that support. All right, Brian Petrie will talk to you next week with us for the main event challenge. And I would also acknowledge our producer, Cody Merrow, that keeps this Anik and Florian podcast family as tight-knit as it is, communicating with Ray and with Petrie and alerting me and Kenny over the weekend to what had happened with Brian's sister. So I just wanted to acknowledge Cody in closing as well. All right, AnikFlorianPodcast.com is live. Merchandise can be had there. I don't know where you find those Yo Fucking Later designs, but those are probably out there somewhere. One More Sleep designs at millions.co, KennyFlorianMartialArts.com if you want to follow everything that Ken-Flo's got going on. And I just want to say, as a little kicker on the way out, according to Renzo and Royler Gracie in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the red belt is reserved for those whose influence and fame takes them to the pinnacle of the art. It is awarded in lieu of a 9th and 10th degree black belt. If a practitioner receives his or her black belt at 19, the earliest they could expect to receive a 9th degree red belt would be at the age of 67. So there you go, Ken-Flo.
Amazing.
All right. All right. Thank you to our guests, Francis Marshall, Ray Longo, Brian Petrie. Our producer is Cody Merrow. We are back next Monday. We'll see if Sergey Pavlovich or Curtis Blaydes remains the heavyweight contender, and also get you ready for another UFC Fight Night later in the month. Thank you all for listening, for watching. Tell your friends. Let's grow the show. For Ken-Flo and John Anik, we will talk to you in less than 7 days. Until then, yo fucking later.